Hello there and welcome to this conversation on Martyr's Innovation prior to the Kenya Innovation Week 2023 that is set to kick off on the 27th of November to the 1st of December. My name is Nina Shaban, and with that said, to delve deeper into this conversation is the Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya National Innovation Agency, also known as Kenya. This is Mr. Tony Omwansa. Thank you very much for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, so innovation is quite wide. Maybe we can start off by talking about the innovation that we're speaking of right here.
Okay, thanks very much. You're right. I mean, innovation is broad,
Yeah.
but we have a very simplistic definition of innovation. It's change that adds value.
Okay.
As simple as that. Because things must be the way they are now, and there is a way they could be, all right? And in the course of that transition, we must create new value. And new value could be in form of cheaper, faster, more convenient, easy to access, easy to consume, and so forth. So that's our simplistic look of things. But the context in which then we operate is trying to nurture ideas to become commercially viable. Because initially, if let's say I'm doing a research or I have an idea, and then I want to move it over time to create new commercial value, which then people can consume and pay for, and I generate a revenue for myself, that becomes really the emphasis of what we do as an innovation agency. And that's in the context of, the economic engine is create new ideas and create new jobs. So we exist as an innovation agency to catalyze the conversion of ideas into commercial value.
All right. Now, maybe we can also touch on the 10-year innovation plan that is set to be launched. Of course, we're going to talk about the event as well. But what is that 10-year innovation plan all about? Okay.
Thanks very much. We say that if you don't plan, then any destination becomes a destination.
Yeah.
And over time, countries that have really made a lot of progress, they've been very deliberate and consistent about certain things. And these things need to be informed by what are your strengths as a country, what are your challenges that you're facing as a country that you want to address. So if we go to countries like Singapore or even the UK for that matter, they're very, very deliberate over a period of time on certain things that they want to specialize. So I'd like to give a classic example. We talk about the Nyayo car. I'm sure you heard about it.
Yes, I have.
So what if we stuck at it for 10 years? Classic example. So we've put together a 10-year innovation master plan. Over the last many months, a lot of consultation, a lot of engagement with stakeholders, to visualize where do we want to go over the next 10 years. As a country, we are known for a number of things now. We talk about M-Pesa,
yes.
We talk about, digital transformation and all that. But then how do you channel this energy towards very specific things? Looking at Vision 2030, which is more like a foundational document, our constitution, thinking about the Africa Agenda 63 and so forth. And we pick this innovation agenda. And so we're going to be launching a plan that puts priority on 3 areas. And the 3 areas are skills for innovation. It's very easy to assume that we know innovation, or we can make good policies about innovation, or we can educate people about innovation. So skills for innovation is going to be a big deal, starting from policymakers all the way to elementary school. So in some countries, for example, intellectual property is taught at elementary. But that's not the case here. So we want to be very intentional about skills. The second thing is around the startup economy. In the commercialization of ideas and research outputs. And the third pillar is going to be market access. You've got to be very intentional about accessing markets globally, not just locally, for innovative startups. So those are the 3 pillars. And the support for those 3 pillars is going to be our policy and atmosphere and access to finance. Resources that then drive that agenda. So those 5 blocks basically make the 10-year plan. Within each of them, we've got priority projects, and we've got a sense of how we will measure them over time and the specific targets that we want to achieve across the board.
All right. Well, before we even get into the nitty-gritties, because we have different points where we're going to touch on the skills and the startups and, of course, the market access across our conversation this evening. So maybe we can start off with please let us in on this. How does the funding ecosystem in the country look like at the moment? And is there ample room for businesses in the stages of inception to find suitable financing to grow?
Okay, I would say, yes, there are a number of options for funding innovative ideas. but we can do a lot better.
Okay.
And that's the message. It depends, again, whom you're comparing yourself to. I think we can do a lot better. When we look at the Global Innovation Index, it does assess Kenya, which is now between number 6 and 10, sometimes 4, sometimes 3 across Africa, demonstrates that we're doing very well. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement. Just to explain the principle behind funding is that government does what we call de-risking. It gives funding for ideas, exploration, research, early stage commercialization, and we've got institutions that support that. And then as the ideas start maturing, you've got more like loans, which you pay back. In the early stages, it's more like grants. You know, like if you look at the National Research Fund, they really give grants. As you advance up the value chain, you start getting loans from government. And then as you move up the value chain and the systems and the startups start maturing, it's more private sector funding. And we've got quite a number of angel investors and VCs who are now picking up very well and injecting resources into startups. We've got startups that have succeeded as a result of funding across that entire array of options. And there are those who have not succeeded. And that's normal.
And that was my next question to you, sir. We've seen quite a number of startups that fall into distress and fold operations in just in the recent past. And mainly, if you look at statistics, most of the startups actually, out of 10 startups, about 7 fall within 5 years of them being in operation. So my question is, what do you see as the underlying challenges? What is the main challenge here, apart from, of course, access to finance? It cannot be the only challenge.
So, you know, that distribution is global. So there's nothing extremely peculiar about our context. But then we've got our own challenges as well that contribute to a higher rate of failure. But generally, to answer the question about what then makes the startups fail is a number of things. One could be that there was no good fit between the problem and the solution. It's very possible that I can actually work on a solution and then I start looking for the problem. And maybe the problem doesn't exist as I thought it should be. Very possible. It's very possible that the market wasn't ready for the idea. So I could be way ahead of the time. And for this particular context, maybe an idea could work better in another environment. So I kind of move quickly to try and create a solution. And then the market doesn't respond as I thought. Of course, funding is another. Another is the enough runway, as you may call it, for me to pick the right momentum. So I have to burn resources, and resources is not just money, but the efforts that I have to put to sustain myself while the idea picks up. And I may not have enough runway, so to speak. And by the time the idea is stable to go, then I'm burnt out. You know, I was doing a PhD thesis one day, and then I discovered that by the time I submit the thesis, I'm completely burnt out. I'm not even interested in this idea anymore. It's an anticlimax in itself, and I just want to do something else, you know. So a couple of other reasons is how strong and complementary are the skills of the founders. You know, it's sometimes, I used to teach in university, you would get 2 students who are doing the same course, and then they say, oh, we're going to build a startup. That's all right. But you know, to build that startup, you need a set of skills. You need the technical know-how, you probably need some marketing, you need a bit of fundraising, So we'll find one person is trying to do like 2, 3 functions and they can't balance themselves out, and somewhere along the way they drop off. So that can be a range of reasons.
And on that note,
yes,
what remedy does the agency have for these different challenges, these different trends?
Okay. So first thing is capacity development. You know, you got to educate people to appreciate that this is what it really takes. That you need the complementary skills. You do need information on access to market and develop all these track of activities. And be cautious that at the point of starting, you need to have a sense that you can have a reasonable runway. All right, and that you can get the right support. Now, as an agency, we can't provide support. I get like 1,000 emails every other day. I can't provide all the support that is necessary. But through the network of incubation hubs and innovation hubs across the country, including universities and TVETs who have facilities, we're able to direct people to this kind of facilities and say, you know, you can get this kind of support in certain places. If you were to look at institutions like Kirdi, Kirdi was specifically made to support testing and validating ideas. So you can get incubated in an Kirdi. You want to make a shoe out of leather from a crocodile, you can go to Kirdi and they can support you with the science, the research, and so on and so forth. So our job is in trying to develop the national system of innovation, which includes guiding people. How do you get the right support at the right time? So then you increase the likelihood of success.
How do you ensure ideas turn into sustainable businesses?
Okay. So one classic example on one very end is we run what we call R2C, Research to Commercialization Program.
Okay.
So this targets researchers who are coming up with new ideas. They have invented something, but in their mind, they were not business people. You need to teach them what is value proposition. What does a customer want? How does packaging look like? How could you fundraise? What business model would you take? Would you be web-based or would you run a physical facility? How would you sort out your manufacturing and supply chain issues? So you start orienting someone from a research or just an idea into the elements that make up a business. And then now they need to operate in an environment that enables them to grow as they are guided step by step, because it's hard work. People sometimes think that innovating and coming up with amazing ideas is like, bam, all of a sudden something has just happened.
I assure you, many of us think it's that out here.
It's hard work.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I'd like for us to now touch on the Kenya Innovation Week. It's a whole week event. It starts from the 27th of November and ends on the 1st of December. What are we set to expect during this whole week?
Okay, so thanks very much. This is 2023. As an agency, we started running an Innovation Week 2.5 years ago. So we ran the first one at the end of 2021. Then we did 2022, where the head of state actually came in December. And now we're going to run the 2023. The couple of things which are unique about 2023. First of all, is that it's a Commonwealth edition. And so what we did is we got into partnership with the Commonwealth to run a 56-member state event. So this is the first time that the Commonwealth is supporting an effort of an innovation week where we are rallying stakeholders from the entire 56 country. So the head of state was gracious enough to actually invite the various countries. The second thing that is peculiar about this Innovation Week is that the Commonwealth are actually going to be issuing their Commonwealth Innovation Awards. Okay. And that's a big deal. It's going to be a very big deal. That normally is coordinated by the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, and she'll be in town as one of the keynote speakers. I think the third thing that is also peculiar about this, given the numbers that I've just talked about, all these countries, we've got over 500 innovations being exhibited at the Innovation Week. So there's a huge array. The fourth thing I would observe there is that we've got over 20 summits that are happening. All things to do with AI, things to do with commercialization processes and procedures, entrepreneur universities, youth-led innovations. We've got, including the Young Scientists Kenya, we've got over 500 young high schoolers attending the Innovation Week and also showcasing their STEM work, basically on the work they have been doing through school and seeking various kinds of support and partnerships. So it's a huge event. I can tell you for free, you walk in on the morning, by end of day, you have only been able to move around maybe 5% over the entire event. So you need more than 5 days. Your leg's going to get tired in the evening, but that's the beauty. You're going to network like crazy because we're trying to create possibilities for people to project their innovations beyond their local countries. What lessons can we learn from other countries? For example, we've got India feeding in a huge team of people. Some are innovators, some are policymakers to kind of share their experiences on solutions they have made that could possibly fit here. And ourselves trying to share what could possibly fit there and kind of trying to look for opportunities. In the UK, for example, I mean, there's so much conversation about Kenya Innovation Week. You'll be in London and everybody looks at you. Instead of talking about marathon, they talk about Kenya
Innovation Week. Well, that's that's very, very wonderful. Now, Tony, I don't know what your agency is planning to do, because let me just give you context. There's so many conferences that come up, and they're interesting, they're fancy, they're nice, but after the conference, that's it. Everything is forgotten. So what is the Kenya Innovation Week all about that is going to be different, that will actually be impactful, in that we'll be witnessing real businesses, real deals, etc.? Okay,
thanks very much. You're right. I always like to guide my team and partners that we are not an event agency. So our job is not organizing events. We can only use events for a cause, all right? So it's a means to something. Now, innovation thrives when you catalyze engagements from different disciplines and different stakeholders. So you do need government for policy issues. You do need private sector who kind of help to accelerate innovations, and they do need the appropriate policies, all right? You do need academia because that's where research happens and ideas, are developed further. So I'll hint to you, there's several things I would have said, but I'll hint to you about 2 or 3 that demonstrate there's something peculiar here. First and foremost, we're running the Presidential Innovation Award. It's a challenge and award, and it started many months ago. And the president was kind enough to say, I want to be associated with identifying new ideas, and may I see them at the Innovation Week, the best, all right, the cream of the cream. So through that challenge, we are actually doing the evaluation as we speak, so that by the time we get to the Innovation Week, we've got the leading innovations from every county. All right? And then they're going to be receiving recognition, no problem, and the top will probably be receiving anything between 2 and 5 million, each of them by the head of state. Now, from there, we move into acceleration. The idea is that an innovation will not thrive until it gets to the public. Because you do need a consumer, and the consumer is not in the room, is in the public. That's why you organize forums like this, so that innovations connect with the public. But then after that, you got to continue supporting them based on the networks they have built, the pivoting that they may need to do in their business ideas, and so on and so forth. So that's a classic example. That all we are doing basically is getting to an innovation week just to build momentum and add whatever we must add, and then we continue with the acceleration and commercialization support. So that's a classic example. So for us, an innovation week is a point of convergence where you evaluate what you've done the entire year, and there's a very clear connection between this event and the previous event, and the momentum that we are building on an annual basis. When I say the 10-year innovation master plan, you have to have a way of evaluating, and it has to happen every year. And that's through an innovation week.
I got you. Now, hand in hand with that,
yes.
How can you ensure that you have all these innovations being formally registered and to avoid this loss of copyright and pulling them into a particular, or rather pulling them into, not even particularly, but pulling them into the tax bracket and etc.?
Okay. So you've addressed actually 2 points there. First of all is around the protection issues. And the second is how do you kind of create an appropriate atmosphere that they can be insulated, all right, for a period of time for them to become self-sustaining. So let's talk about the loss in terms of intellectual property. So we have partnered with the Kenya Institute of KIPI. They handle intellectual property, okay? The Kenya Industrial Property Institute will be on site running clinics for innovators, all right? And they will be providing all the support that individuals need in nurturing their ideas. We've also partnered with the Kenya Corporate Board. They oversee matters to do with corporate. They will be running clinics on site throughout the entire week. We've partnered with the FCDO, is a UK institution, to run a commercialization summit. And there you get exposed on how you protect your intellectual property. We've also partnered with private entities who are going to be running some summits across the entire week. So we've provided the mechanism for people to get educated and to also protect. In other words, KIPI is on site, Kekobo is on site. You wouldn't say you don't know where to take your ideas. That's number one. Now, second is around how we insulate over time. So we've been working on a startup bill because we want to legislate a few things. That way, it is easier and almost guaranteed that you will be secured for a period of time. We haven't fully succeeded to deliver the law, partly because stakeholder engagement is a fairly complex thing, and especially when we have different voices and perspectives. And that may take us a little bit of time than we thought, but the goal would be that once we have this in law, we should be able to tag startups in a way that they can be recognized by, say, KRA, to insulate them for a period of time until they stabilize. So that becomes a form of incentive to encourage people to actually go into startup world.
All right. And looking into that, or hand in hand with what you've just said, we are facing extremely tough times right now. I'm sure this is something that you cannot go a whole day without talking about the cost of living, as a Kenyan, I mean. So are there any type of incentives or for innovators where they'll be free from some taxes?
Yes.
Is that part of your plan?
Yes. So, I mean, this is intentional, and I think government, there's a clear realization that you've got to insulate people for a period of time for them to thrive. But you see, for you to do that, you also need a legislative or legal framework against which you operate. And that's why the startup bill is such an important agenda. How quickly we have delivered on it, definitely not as fast as we thought we should. But we hope that through this kind of forums, and the head of state will actually be there. He is one of the champions of this agenda. He talks about bottom, economic transformation, bottom up. And this becomes an opportunity, again, to engage the stakeholders and say, well, we thought we would do this as fast as we thought, but probably this doesn't happen. But that doesn't mean we've lost course. And we need to consider other things according to the constitution and the law and public participation and so forth. And we shall deliver these kind of incentives very, very specifically. So I don't doubt the intentions of the leadership towards formalizing this. But At the same time, currently there are different products that have actually been launched. If you look at the Hustler Fund, it's got a component of the of startup funding. We've got other institutions like the Youth Fund and Women Fund that provide some form of support. I've seen the funding, for example, of the National Research Fund also start focusing more towards commercialization and providing the necessary grants that people need to develop their ideas further. So we are on course. Not as best, I think, as we could be, and that's why we're putting together the 10-year plan to ensure that on an annual basis we are staying on course, and the president himself will be launching that plan.
Yeah, because even when you talk of the Hustler Fund or anything like that, you still find people out here who say access to those funds are a bit, or even the limits are a bit too low to actually sustain a business. Either way, we thank you for joining us. Unless you have anything to add, I would like to bring this conversation to an end.
I think it's just a message that I would give as a take-home. As I checked my records now, it's like the pavilions are almost full. And if you are interested in participating as an exhibitor, there is still an opportunity. You go to the website, kenyainnovationweek.com. You can also engage us on Twitter and social media as well. And as far as I know, there is no slots left for speaking unless you want to participate in summits. So you can sign up and come in as a delegate. See you there as we make a transformation of our country. One last thing is about the Global Innovation Index. I did a survey to just explore how we're performing as a country. There is a huge opportunity for improvement because then that makes our country more attractive. See you there as we innovate together.
All right. Thank you very much. That was Attorney Omonsa, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya National Innovation Agency. Now, the Kenya Innovation Week 2023 Commonwealth Edition will be held in Nairobi from the 27th of November to the 1st of December 2023 and will this year include Commonwealth leaders, government officials, business and academic representatives, as well as a delegation from the Commonwealth Secretariat led by the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, the Right Honourable Patricia Scotland Casey.